Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Point Zero Games. That was a blinding flash of light for your face. My name is Josh, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Green Lantern Power Battery resource from the War of Light storyline event. Now, anybody that's played in a War of Light has most likely ended up getting some of these objects, as well as this big guy in the back here. This is the Green Lantern Power Battery itself. We're going to talk about exactly how this is used, how you add it to your force, and more than anything else, how powerful is it in comparison to other previous resources that we have seen within Heroclix. So I've got this card right here. That's a card that says Power Battery. You're not going to see that. You can, if you'd like to, you could go look this up on HC Realms or somewhere else to read the card. If you have the card yourself, you could just pick it up and read it alongside me, so that way we can figure out how the hell this thing works. Honestly, it's pretty simple by comparison of a lot of the other things. It just seems like it sounds really complicated. So let's go ahead and begin. First section here is force construction. Now, the power battery must be assigned a power ring, which will look a lot like this. This would be a power ring. You can actually put it on your finger. It doesn't go past my first knuckles because I have really giant sausage fingers. As well as 1 to 6 distinct constructs. The power battery, that's this guy right back here. This costs 2 points, plus the combined cost of the assigned power ring and the constructs, and it must total a minimum of 16 points. Now, the power ring and constructs are all attached to the power battery at the beginning of the game. So you can actually just slide these right in, and they will actually be attached to the power battery. If you've got guys that are a bit more lenient about it, I'm sure they'll let you just kind of put them off to the side if you want. Because like this net is actually fairly difficult to try and fit into it without, possibly like throwing the resource off of the edge of the world or something. So, yeah, you do have to have all that together. Now, it is possible to actually put together a combination of this stuff that does not equal up to a total of 16 points. For instance, the decoy is a 6-point construct. So let's say we attached that. And then we also wanted to use the blue power lantern ring. Now that is a total of 4 points. There we go. And then this is 2, which means that we only have a total right now of 12 points that are attached to the power battery. So we actually could not use just this setup. However, there are combinations that would work. For instance, the ring costs 4. We also have the crossbow, which costs 10. And then we have the power lantern battery. That gives us a minimum of 16 points. Now, the maximum you can boot this thing up to is 70 total points. Which means that there will just generally be a lot of constructs and one given ring plus the power battery that will equal up to 70 points. But overall, you should be able to get 1 ring and 6 constructs on here, somewhere between 16 and 70 points. Now, that does seem like it could get fairly expensive for a resource, but do take into account that the Phoenix Force is also quite expensive. The Book of Skulls is also fairly expensive, and they offer, some fairly strong capabilities. So the amount of points that you'll end up dumping on this in, say, a 300 point round probably won't be too much. You'll be looking at, let's say we did this right now. We've got 4 points there. We've got 10 here on the crossbow. We've got 6 here, and then we've got 8 on the net. So that gives us a total of 24, 28. That's 30 points for a 3-figure resource. Like, that's not really that expensive, and it's not that bad to add on to your force. And we'll explain that in a minute, exactly why this is so powerful. Next section on the card, we have core members. When a friendly character has any constructs on its card, so let's say this is our character card here. We've got the construct on the character card, right? It is called a core member and is assigned the power battery. Friendly core members can use the ability of the constructs on its card and the ability of the power ring attached to the power battery. So let's go over that real quick. The construct for the crossbow, for instance, allows us to use range combat expert. The blue lantern ring reads as such if this character already has the blue lantern core keyword modify all of its combat values except damage by +1. Sorry, that's the... There we go. No, that was the resource side. They both read the same exact way. Otherwise, this character has the Blue Lantern core keyword and can use Perplex, but only to increase combat values. So you would be able to use both of these on any of the people that would be considered a core member. Now, if a friendly core member is KO'd, any constructs on its cards are reattached to the power battery. If the power battery is KO'd, all constructs are removed from friendly core members' cards. So, let's say this is on the core member's card. This dude gets KO'd. You would actually just flat out reattach it to there. If somebody KOs this character, they don't actually collect any victory points off of the crossbow. That's one of the kind of unique things about the Green Lantern Power Battery. With things like the Phoenix Force as well as the Book of the Skulls, you would actually count each of those individual things as the character is KO'd. So that's one of the reasons why the power battery is fairly strong. Next, let's talk about the setup. Now, during the beginning of the game, the power battery is placed in 4 squares of clear terrain in your starting area. So already a big difference. This guy is actually going to sit on the board. And the reason for that is, if I can do this one-handed, I'm holding my phone up at the moment. But the Green Lantern power battery actually has a dial that includes things such as a defensive value. For instance, its first click, I'm going to dump that ring off. Its first click, as you might be able to see there you go, is has a number 1 next to this big, looks like those old 6-shooter pop cap guns we had when I was a kid, right? A number 1, as well as 19 defense and a 0 with a damage special. It is considered colossal sized. It does have traits. It is not indomitable, and you'll notice that it says has the number sign next to range. That is also going to be very important. So, he is placed in 4 squares of clear terrain in your starting area. Now, the power battery affects line of fire, can use its powers and abilities, is damaged and KO'd as if it were a character. So all of these things are like it was a character, which means that you can have those powers and abilities outwitted if they do not specifically state they can't be countered. It does mean that somebody can deal direct damage to this and try to KO it. Now, it does that in a special way, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But now the number 1 is a special power that it has available to it, and that's something else that we'll also cover. Let's finish up the setup. Now, characters, objects, and blocking terrain may not occupy the same squares as the power battery. So this you cannot have somebody sit on top of this. You cannot have somebody phasing teleport into it. But it also means that you cannot, for instance, try to give super strength in some crazy weird fashion, and then it can pick it up. There's no ways to actually do that stuff. And you cannot set it on top of blocking terrain. You cannot set it on top of objects. So that's a very unique thing as well. Now, the power battery is immediately KO'd when the last friendly character is defeated. So if your entire force is defeated, this becomes KO'd, and these are the points for the power battery are calculated into total victory points for the win. Now, attacking the power battery. If the power battery is adjacent to an opposing character or within its range and line of fire, that character may be given a power action to roll 2d6 and add their attack value. If the result is equal to or higher than the power battery's defense value, it takes damage equal to the opposing character's printed damage minus 2. This can't be ignored. So, let's start at the end there. This can't be ignored. That means that you cannot ignore this game effect with something like Pulse Wave. That is very important because it means that you cannot end up dealing any form of pure damage to it. Now, the only way that you can attack this is they have to be adjacent or they have to be within range and line of fire. So specifically, they have to be adjacent to an opposing character or within its range and line of fire. It's a weird wording. If the power battery is adjacent to an opposing character are within its range and line of fire. So yeah, if you're next to it, or if you are within its range or line of fire, then you can give your character a free action, a power action, to roll 2d6 and add your attack value as you typically would. So you would make an attack. That's literally all this is saying. Let me simplify it. If you're next to this, or you are within range and line of fire of it, you can make a closer range combat attack. You cannot, however, make a closer range combat action against it. You cannot make a power action against it. This is the only way. You are giving a power action to roll for a combat, and even then, it is not a combat attack. It specifically states that it's a power action that allows you to roll 2d6 and add your attack value. So anything that would proc off of an attack would not proc on the power battery. Last but not least, the fact that it takes damage equal to your printed damage value -2, which means that if you only have 2 damage on the dial, you actually can't hurt this at all. So those are all very, very important things. This also means that things like poison do not affect it. Things such as quake and knockback do not affect it because of its colossal size. So those are things to remember when you are attacking the power battery, is that you're literally just making a pure attack, and that's it. But it's, again, not considered an attack. Now, let's talk about the actual powers that are on the battery itself. So we saw the one that was on there. Let's explain this. The dial of the power battery indicates certain special powers that it can use in those little pop cap looking slots. Now, once per turn, whenever it's given an action to use one of those powers and the actions resolve, then you may roll a d6 that can't be re-rolled, and you deal the power battery half of the result as unavoidable damage. So this is something that's really interesting as well, because since this is considered to be as if it were a character on the board, it means that you're never actually rolling a d6 just to move the dial like you would with the Infinity Gauntlet or the Utility Belt or anything. Instead, you're actually rolling a d6 to deal damage to it. Now, again, also, once per turn, it can be given an action. So it does follow all the same rules that a character would end up following while being on the board. So definitely do remember that. Now, as you notice on the dial, it does have a star, which means we have traits. There are 2 specific traits here. The first one is Permeate the Universe. Now, the power battery's range value is equal to its click number. So that's where that number with the lightning bolt comes in, the little pound sign. That's telling you that whatever your click number is, that is how far away you can actually use a ranged attack. That's your overall range. Not necessarily a ranged attack, but that is what your range will be with this. So let's say that you are wanting to use Perplex or Outwit, which are on some of the dials. If you specifically, as the power battery, wanted to use that, then you would have to give it a power action, or sorry, you would give it a free action to do that, but it would have to be within the actual Power Lantern's range. I was clicking around the dial a little bit. The second trait is called Will. It's part of the emotional spectrum. Now, I believe that each of these different power batteries, there are more than just the green power battery. There are orange and yellow and black and white and all the color spectrum. I believe each of these emotional spectrum ones has a different ability to it. I'm not sure because I actually never looked at the things. Now, with Will, it says if the power battery, attached power ring, and constructs are all the same color, each opposing character may be given no more than 1 free action per turn. Now, that may not be the same on everything. I'm not sure. It may be the same on all of them. However, that's really strong. It means that it is trying to reward you for having all the same colors. Now, there are packs such as the lantern packs that being sold at the con at your stores, as well as the Comic-Con. San Diego Comic-Con just finished and they had it available there. You can actually get the different colored constructs as well as the different colored power battery itself and still be able to have all of that ring true. So let's take a look at the powers. Power number 1 on here is that you give the power battery a power action place an attached construct on a friendly character's card that isn't already a core member. So remember, these are already going to be attached whenever you are playing the power battery. Now, with this, you're going to give this guy a power action, and then you will actually put this onto a friendly character's card that isn't already a core member. Next one is to swap a construct. That's going to be your number 2 power. You give the power battery a free action. You can exchange a construct between 2 friendly core members cards or the power battery and a friendly core members card. So let's say that we've got our 2 core members right here and right here. All right. Now, let's say this guy's got the net and this guy has got the crossbow. If you have power number 2 showing, it means that you can give the power battery a free action, and you can actually swap these out between the 2 of these. Or you could actually say, well, this one dude over here already has the net attached to him. So how about I want the crossbow? I will peel the crossbow off and I will put it onto him. And then we will move the net back over to the power battery. There we go. So that's all the power number 2 is saying. It's just a swap. That's why it's called swap a construct. Power number 3 is called form a construct. This one, you give the power battery a power action. You remove a construct from it and replace it with a construct from outside the game up to 2 points higher than the one removed. All right, so let's look at that portion, and there's a second portion after that. So let's say that we've got this net is on here. This is our character. And then this is out of the game. We don't even have this on the board, right? We just brought it with us for the hell of it. Now, we can give the power battery a power action. We remove a construct from it, and we can replace it with said decoy. All right, that's power number 3 is showing. Now, that's pretty cool because it means that you can build a force that would use, say, these 2, or you could even build these 2 that would give it a lower point value, right? And then you could swap it out with something so long as the construct from outside the game is up to 2 points higher than the one removed. So it means that if we remove this, we would be able to put this on, since the decoy is 6 points and the net is 8 points. That works for us. However, let's consider if the decoy was on here, this was already in the game, and this was outside of the game. Now, this is 10 points, this is 6 points. That would mean that you cannot put this in place of this. It does not work. You have to make sure that they are within 2 points of each other. So it does mean that you have to use a little bit of strategy whenever you decide to use this. Now, if the new construct is a lower point value, this is a free action instead. If the new construct is a higher point value, this is a double power action instead. So there are punishments for going higher. There are freebies for going lower. Do remember that. By the way, let me go over these real quick. This gives you range combat expert. The decoy gives you shape change, and the net allows you to use smoke cloud as a free action, but you only place 2 squares of hindering terrain, and characters occupying these squares must break away if not already required to do so. So those are also, like, the constructs on this are fairly strong. Next, we have share a construct. This is power number 4. Give the power battery a free action and roll a d6 that can't be re-rolled. If a construct is attached to the power battery in the slot indicated by the result, all friendly core members can use the ability of that construct until your next turn. Now, here's the thing. None of these slots are numbered, right? So that's something of a problem. What number are they? Well, you number them yourself. You just, like we've got Tyler just wrote in permanent marker on here what the different slots are for him. So you actually have to decide what numbers those are. You number them 1 through 6, and then if you need to share a construct, then you roll a d6 that can't be re-rolled. Now, again, the second part of that, if construct is attached in the slot indicated by the result, all friendly core members can use the ability of that construct until your next turn. Very, very powerful, especially if you have something like a lot of range guys and most of them are having trouble because they've gotten knocked down to lower AVs. That gives you an opportunity to be able to use range combat expert for everybody and potentially end up doing very well for yourself. Power number 5 is Master Constructs. Give the power battery a free action. Place an attached construct on a core member's card. Now, remember back on number 1 where it said you had to place an attached construct on a friendly character's card that isn't already a core member. Once you've reached 5 on the special powers for this dial, on the pop cap dial, you can actually attach 2 different constructs onto one given card. Very, very powerful because this starts putting us into a bit more of a Book of the Skull territory where we can place multiple different things onto one specific card. So this would mean we'd get to use a free action Smoke Cloud as well as Range Combat Expert on the character. Very, very strong. Finally, we have Improved Constructs. Now, this is power number 6. And it says that friendly core members modify their combat values by +1 for each construct on their character card. Now, what this means is if you only have this guy, all of your combat values are modified by +1. If you have this guy plus this guy, all your combat values are modified by +2. If you had 3 of them on there, then you would up it by 3. And that's all of them. That's going to be your speed, your damage, your attack value, your defense, your range is even increased by that. So that is very, very strong. And last but not least, as you noticed on that dial earlier, we have got a special damage power that's on there. It says 0. That is called Recharge a Ring. Now the power battery can use support as if it had an attack value of 10. So you can actually place somebody adjacent to this, have this roll for support, and potentially heal up your friends. So not a bad little bag of tricks to have on there. Better yet, there's also the fact that the power battery has additional powers attached to it. For instance, if we look at click number 2, we will see that it has Perplex available to it. So you can get Perplex on it. Click number 3. As you'll notice, we start hitting territory. We've got power 1 and power 2, as well as Outwit on the dial. That would mean that you have an Outwit of 3 range with it. Next, we have click 4, which gives us power 1, power 2, and probability control. So that's also really strong. And then if we continue going down the line, what we're going to find is eventually, I'm sorry, that's my battery saying that it's dying, whatever. It's got plenty. Anytime you ever hear that buzz, that sound on here, that's what's happening. I don't know how to turn that off either. It's really annoying. So here we go. On this click is click 7. We see that we also have Barrier now, as well as Outwit. So we can actually use 2 different abilities as well as 2 special powers. And then by the time that you, let's see, the first time that you're going to see click power 5 is going to be on click 16, and that's also with prob control. That's a 16 range prob control, guys. Pretty ballsy stuff there. And then we get down to click number 19 and 20. 20 is the last click of the dial. Let's take a look at click 20 because it's fairly ridiculous. That is going to be power number 6, power number 5. So you can put multiple objects on one thing and get the increased combat values, as well as what is effectively a 20 range probability control. So there you go. That's the ridiculousness of the power battery, ladies and gentlemen. That's the whole video. It's fairly simple. It's actually a lot more simple than some of the old stuff was, especially the Phoenix Force. Like that was fairly confusing at first, but eventually we figured it all out, and we're now pretty damn expert with the Phoenix Force, and that's it. So, hopefully you guys have played around with it. Hopefully you guys will play around with it after you're done with this. If not, I would suggest it because this thing is pretty damn good. The fact that it basically survives on its own is really, really strong as it stands, just because of that reduced damage being dealt to it. But beyond that, it's also just, it's a really nice looking resource all around. So, yeah, that's all we got. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit like and comment. Make sure that you share the videos over social media so that way other people will, especially with this one, make sure that everybody knows how the hell to use this thing going into competition. My name is Josh. I'm a Blue Lantern, a fuzzy Blue Lantern. This is Point Zero Games. I hope you guys have a fantastic, fantastic week. We will see you back on Wednesday with Deck Techs. Peace.